Hi, I'm Tricia at Club Scrap, and welcome to the Accordion Pocket File tutorial. I can't wait to show you how to make this handy little piece of scrapbooking efficiency. If you happen to have the kit, you have very close to everything you need. A couple of other things will be necessary, and I'll just walk you through this all step by step. For review, this is what the finished folio looks like, and it can really be in any color you want. This is a peach color. The most critical part of the component is that you use a 100-pound or more weight cardstock. So our standard Club Scrap paper is usually 80-pound cover weight. This is a little bit heavier at 100-pound, and that is what is included in all of our kits. Okay, so you also need a score pal, and let's go ahead and get started right away with that. I've gone ahead and printed a copy of the instructions, and I've designed these so that they can be cut in half and added to a binder, because at Club Scrap we do have this 5.5 by 8.5 standard size, so you can go ahead, or you can also fold it in half and put it in a binder, so you always have your instructions handy in case you'd like to make a second one, or maybe this one gets a lot of wear and tear and it's time for a replacement. So we have that for you whenever you need it. So I'm using a score pal. I'm going to grab one of the sheets in the kit. Now note also that your kit includes 4 sheets of paper. You only need 3, but isn't it nice to have a backup in case something were to go wrong? Okay, so what the most important thing you need to do now is, knowing we're going to be folding this paper eventually, we want to make sure that the grain of the paper is cooperating with the direction of our scores. So to determine the grain, just simply hold the paper by its edge and study its behavior. You can kind of see whether or not it dips or if it feels very stiff. Because this paper is heavy, it will feel pretty stiff either way. So if I just check that, does it bend easily or is it pushing back? Then rotate one turn and hold it by another edge. And this is very, very stiff. It really does not want to be folded. This is a lot more flexible. Therefore, place it in your score pal so that it dips easily in that direction, left to right. Now we're going to do a bunch of scores here, so bear with me. We'll score 3 inches, 4, 5, and 6. Then take the entire sheet and flip it from the bottom to the top. And we're going to score a whole bunch more times. I'll start at 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, and 6.5. So now what we've just done is made a series of bumps and little valleys that will form the base of our unit. Let's set this piece aside. I'm going to take another sheet of paper and grab my paper trimmer. This time when we put the paper into the trimmer, just take one sheet, check the grain. This is very stiff. This is very flexible. When I add this paper to the trimmer, I want to make sure that the grain dips easily from top to bottom. That's indicated by this little arrow on the diagram. You can see the left-right arrow here. This one's going up, down. Okay, so just make sure it dips easily top to bottom. If you're using your Fiskars trimmer, make sure you stabilize your paper before you cut. And we will trim this paper at 9, stabilize, and 5. Okay, this 5-inch piece will become one of the dividers in the file. This smaller middle piece will be set aside as a scrap, and then this narrow piece will be set aside to be scored. We'll take a 3rd sheet of paper. It does not really matter which direction the grain is running when you put this into your trimmer, so it can go either way, and we'll make 2 cuts. The first one is at 8.5, and then slide it down to 4.5. You just made 3 dividers. So notice that the sizes are all different: small, medium, large. If we add the other one that we made that was even wider, you can see they're all graduated in size. I'm going to set aside my trimmer and get my score pal one more time. Take this 3 by 12 inch piece of paper and put it horizontally into the score pal, and we'll score it a bunch of whole numbers, and we're going to skip the number 8. So we score at 5, 6, and 7, and then 9, 10, and 11. So that was 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. Now take the paper and flip it from the bottom up to the top. And this time we're going to score it on the 1/2 inches. So pretty much all of them from 4.5 to the very end. So 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, 10.5, and 11.5. So we did all of those. Now you'll see this big gap in the middle here, and that's what we want. One more time, we'll get out our trimmer. And let's place this scored piece in the trimmer and just cut it horizontally at 8 and 4. So this creates a small scrap, and then the 2 scored pieces that will become the sidewalls of your unit. Now we can set the trimmer and the score pile aside for good. We can start by making the base of the unit. Now the anatomy of a score is that every score has a bump or a divot, and you can see that these are every other. And so we're going to start by burying these bumps to make an accordion folded section. So by bury the bump, that means this little raised part gets buried on the inside of my fold. And if you want, you can take a bone folder and you can solidify that crease. Now if I flip it over, this is another bump, so I need to bury it. So sometimes you just pull it back toward you. It does a nice job. If you want to flip it over, you can. Now we've got another bump here, so I bury that bump by putting it on the inside of the fold. And if you want, you can just kind of keep flipping it over. And you're basically fan folding, always making sure that that bump of the score is on the inside of that fold. Whatever position for you is easiest to do this is absolutely fine, as long as you just continue to create these mountains and valleys. One more on this side. Here's another bump, so it goes on the inside of the fold. Again, if you would like to use a bone folder to sharpen the crease of each of these folds, you certainly can. When I'm making a large number of these for a class, I sometimes skip this step. There we go. So this is basically the base of the unit. You've got a narrow lip in the front and then a 5.5 inch wide lip in the back. These are our sidewalls, and then we have our dividers. Now this next step is completely optional, but if you'd like, you can take a corner chomper and round the outside corners. So this is the 5.5 inch section. If you have a corner chomper, you open it like so. I'm going to use the 1/2 inch setting. Now rounding these corners, like I said, is completely optional, but it really looks nice. I'm only going to do the 2 outside corners, and I can round 2 at a time if I'd like, depending on your hand strength. I'm used to making these in big volume, so I try to find any possible shortcut to make it more efficient when I'm making a whole bunch for classes or something like that. So now I have these 4 dividers in graduated sizes, all with rounded corners, and then the 5.5 inch area is rounded as well. At this point, if you haven't done so already, take some of the bookbinding glue that's in the little 2-ounce bottle. This is my favorite elixir of scrapbooking. I mean, it's a wonderful product, and it works well for gluing on embellishments and fabric and anything on your pages, metal, plastic, doesn't matter what it is. This works beautifully. And I pretty much always use it out of this small bottle, unless I'm making a larger handmade book. Then I do it out of the 2-ounce bottle. But if you just pour some of the glue into this, and it's important that you keep the top on, or the glue in the nozzle will dry and then clog at the nozzle, which we want to try to avoid. So there's a couple of ways you can go about doing this, but basically this largest piece needs to be glued into this very last, onto the face of this last mountain fold. So if you consider you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 mountains, you've got 4 dividers, running largest to smallest. So they need to be glued to each of these mountain folds. And let's just call this the mountain face. Now, again, because I've made so many of these, I think one of the best ways to do this is to apply some glue to the piece that you're holding in your hand, rather than try to glue it to the face of the mountain here. So once I have that glue, I've just applied it within like a 1/2 inch area, which is the width of my crease here. And then just press this down so that it's in the very last valley, or I guess there's one more back there, and it sits right on that pleat. And just give that glue a second to bond. It really does not take long. Now with these really heavy duty papers, sometimes a lot of the glue can absorb right into the paper. So you just have to make sure you give it enough time to bond. Make sure it's all the way down in there into that crease. Nice. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the next one. So let's keep our geography going here. We've got our first mountain. The face of it has a divider. Here's another valley, and this is the face of that mountain. I hope that's making sense. So I'll add my next largest divider by adding glue to a 1/2 inch area of this non-rounded edge. Drop it in deep into that valley and make sure this piece bonds well. Oop. Oh, as we say in Wisconsin. Whatever position you need to find to help get everything right where it needs to be. Okay, it's starting to take some shape. And you'll notice again how quickly that glue bonded. Now, if you're wondering, Tricia, why aren't you using just your regular ATG or two-sided adhesive? I find that our bookbinding glue is definitely the strongest material for the job and really works the best. Okay, so there's straight edge again, going into the next valley here. And I always just shove it down in there, make sure it's down all the way to the bottom of that valley fold. One last mountain face here to stick this last one on. So I'll apply the glue to the edge once more. Now might be a great time to add your little labels to the pockets. Just remember that this flap is not a pocket. What I usually do for the best success is start out with pockets 7 and 8 and attach that sticker first. So 7 and 8 would go on the very, very back, 5.5 inch area. And then the next one is 5 and 6. Count backwards here, 3 and 4. And 1 and 2, and then if you would like, you can add the labels to the other side as well. We're getting there. Okay, now what we have left are the 2 side walls. And I will mention that sometimes the first and the last scored area is just a little bit too wide. So I find that it works really well if you just take off about 1/8 of an inch from either side of these, and it makes the assembly just a little bit easier. This is optional, but I find that my finished product just looks really nice. So again, I'm only removed about 1/8 of an inch from the outside edges of the side walls. The same rule applies here with the anatomy of the score. You've got your bump and your divot. So you're just basically fan folding this back and forth, making sure when you make that first fold, you're burying the bump, and everything should flow very nicely. So if you are a card maker, maybe you've learned something for the first time about the score lines, that you have to bury the bump. Perhaps also you've learned about the grain direction of the paper being really important, because if you're trying to fold this fan fold like this on this really heavy paper, if you didn't trim your paper in the right direction, this fold would be much more difficult. And if that happened, well, and you have the accordion pocket file kit, there is an extra sheet of paper in there for you. So now I have this nice accordion shaped fan that will become the side wall of my file. So we're really close to the end. If you happen to have some binder clips or even some clothespins at home that can provide something on which you can clip the file folder once it's glued so that the glue can dry nice and solid, that might be helpful. The trick here to getting this in the right spot is to make sure that you ignore this extra lip at the front. And so I'm looking at the side here, you can see this. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 dividers, and this needs to be placed in those areas. So what you want to do is position this so that it's shaped like the letter W as you put it into the side. And I'm going to take the valleys and jam them down into between each divider. The best way to do this is aim for matching up of the valley on the base and the valley on the wall, and shove that in there. Make sure you get it down as deep in there into the corner to form a nice joint. Did you see how easy that was? I'm going to do that one more time. So just make sure it's looking like a W, not like an M, okay? W. You've got your 4 dividers, and if you bring it way down into the crevice there, it should pop right in. I make that look a little bit easy because I've done this a lot, but if you work on it a little bit, it will work for you as well. Remember, there should be nothing by this narrow flap. What I can do now is pick up the front divider and apply glue to the narrow flap. This is the same one that we cut a little bit off of with our scissors. So just that little flap, and set it down. If you want, you can close this back. Then, to make it easy too, you can pick it up and turn it over if you want. And you can add some glue to the very last little fold. And close it up. That's where the binder clip comes in really handy. So this piece only gets glued on the outer edges, not in between anything, just those outside edges, or the folder doesn't function as well as we'd like it to. Okay, now we can do the same thing on the other side. So we have our little sidewall. I'll position it like a W. And this time the back wall is close to me. So I'm just going to make sure, if you just squeeze this a little bit, and aim for those 4 dividers, fit in there really nicely. Peel back this back divider so I can access the flap for glue application. And then all I have to do here is peel back the front divider. At this point, you can add a binder clip or a clothespin or a clamp or something to this so that it dries securely. Put the lid back on your glue applicator, and you've got yourself a really nice little divider once those ends are secured. Well, now that this is dried, let's take a look at how we did. It's looking perfect. You can see how everything expands like it should, and that's why no glue is actually applied on the individual dividers, only that little flap on the back and the little one on the front. So it's really important to remember that when I was designing this, I tried it a number of different ways, and this method of assembly was by far the very, very best. Now there's one other little thing left in your kit. It's these 2 Velcro dots. So if you just take some scissors here, and they're not really Velcro, they're hook and loop. And just keep track of making sure you know which side is which. So there's going to be the hook side and the loop side, or the fuzzy side and the hard side, however you want to do it. And when I use these in class, I have to pay attention to attach these to my pocket file at the same exact spot, which is about 7.5 and 11.5 inches from the left edge and 3/4 of an inch from this crease right here. That way they interchange from trimmer to trimmer. Of course, you don't have to worry about that. But I'm keeping in mind that if you're going to be using this with one of the Fiskars trimmers, you see that it has this arch to it on the face. So I placed mine a little bit more on the right side, and that seemed to work the best for me. So I'm just going to do this just like my others, 3 1/4 inches up from this fold. So every line in this ruler is 1/4 of an inch, every solid line, 1, 2, 3/4 of an inch. That's lined up with that folded edge. And then I'm going to make a mark at 7.5 inches and 11. 7.5 and 11, just like this little mark. Then, let's see, I'll put, oh, this silly thumb injury I have. Please pardon my Band-Aid. It's really kind of annoying, but I need to have it there. Take the backing off from one of the sides, and then in this case it's the hook side. So now I have a sticky side up, and I'm going to place that circle right in that marked spot, and then I'll repeat by removing the backing from the other piece, the hook side, so it matches. Now you have your piece ready to attach to the trimmer base. So what you would do and I won't do this at this time because I already have the pieces attached to my trimmer base, is you'll peel away the backing from the two pieces, leaving it attached. Just remove that last piece of backing. Then place this right on your trimmer and then push the sticky part of that adhesive onto the back of the trimmer. So then you will have your pieces of your either hook or your loop here that will correspond with the hook and loop here. And when you attach this, you just have another layer of protection that helps keep this vertical for you if things should slide off the end of the table, for example. Well, there you have it, the accordion pocket file. I hope that your project turned out well. It's been recommended to me that someone watch it first and then do the trimming and assembly as you watch it again, because everything is solidified and it all makes sense of where we're headed. And may you achieve many, many wonderful assemblies of Club Scrap collections. Remember, every kit that we do typically has 8 completed pages. So as you trim, everything will get filed into the appropriate pocket and everything will be organized for when you want to put your pages together. This is the way to go. Hope you had fun with me, and I'll see you next time.